TV show called The Alfred Hitchcock Show. Anybody? All right, it's an old black and white show, so I realize that rules out some of the demographic in here. But I remember as a kid, Alfred Hitchcock would come on, and of course when I was a kid, we didn't have access to cartoons 24/7 like these spoiled kids do today with Netflix and Cartoon Network and Disney Junior and all these things. For me, cartoons ended around noon, and after that it was all real people, and then late at night they turned black and white. So I remember there was a show called Alfred Hitchcock, and I was not allowed to watch the show when I was a kid. Apparently it was scary. But I remember one time we were on vacation at my grandparents' house. We were actually up in North Carolina, and my brother and I were staying up late, and we were watching some show, and then here comes Alfred Hitchcock. And so we watched it. And actually, I guess it was kind of scary because it traumatized me as a little kid to where I still remember this episode quite vividly today. And so in this show, if you've never seen it, it would, I don't know if they all work like this, but people were kind of telling a story, and then it stops them, and then it kind of acts out the whole story, and then it would go back to the people at the beginning. And so in this story, on this old black and white episode, there was a man who went to inquire about a house that he saw for sale. Now this house was run down. It was in terrible shape. It looked like it should have been condemned. But they were asking a price for it that was just astronomical, something insane that nobody in their right mind would pay that price for that house. Well, this man comes in and he tells this older lady that owns the house, he says, I'm interested in buying the house. I'd love to buy it. She's like, let me show you around. And he's like, I've already made up my mind. I know I want this house. And so she says, well, this house is special to me. So before you buy it, I just want to tell you all about it. So they sit down and they begin to have a glass of lemonade together. And she begins to tell him the story of the house. And then it kind of goes into the episode there. And so apparently a long time ago, there was a man that lived in that house, and it was this lady's husband. They were newlyweds, they were young and in love, and he'd come across a great sum of money, and he hid it somewhere in the house. But he had a business partner that knew about it, and he killed the guy, and he was trying to find the money, and he never found it. And this lady knew that it was in the house somewhere. And so she knew that if anybody was ever willing to pay that much money for the house, they must have known that the money was hidden somewhere in there. And so at the end of the episode, it comes back to him, and she's saying, so I've always known that one day my husband's killer would come back to find this house. And then she says these words, and this traumatized me as like a 5-year-old, whatever I was. She said, now you know why I waited to tell you my story until after you drank your lemonade. And right on cue, he starts to grab his neck, and he falls over on the chair, and then I had nightmares. And so then I realized I wasn't allowed to watch the show, and that was that. But I was thinking about that story as I've thought about it many times over the course of my life. It stuck with me. But Jesus actually tells a story kind of like that, minus all the killing and poison. But Jesus tells one of his parables that's similar to that because he talks about someone who knows that there's something very valuable hidden here, and he'll do whatever it takes to track it down. And so I want to invite you in your Bibles to turn to Matthew chapter 13. We're going to finish this chapter today. And we're going to look at a couple of parables that deal with what Jesus refers to here in Matthew as the kingdom of heaven. Now, over the last couple of parables that we've looked at, Jesus has spoken a lot about heaven through parables. He talked about a grain of mustard seed and a little bit of leaven. He talked about how it's going to start off small, but this kingdom's going to explode and grow. He talked about how this kingdom is not going to be accepted by everybody, but a sower sowed seed, and some landed on the wayside, some the stony ground, the hard places, the thorns, and not everyone who hears the gospel accepts it. So I can imagine that people are standing around saying, okay, Jesus, we're with you here. We understand not everybody makes it. We understand that it starts small, it's going to get big. But a question might have been growing in their minds, how do we get in? We want to be a part of this kingdom of heaven. What do we have to do? And so these parables we're going to look at today, Jesus shows that it is a personal choice that every individual must make for himself. You need to decide for yourself if you want to be a part of this kingdom or not. And so the first thing that we're going to see by looking at 3 parables today, Jesus will show that it is a personal choice, that some people aren't going to make it because they'll reject it, and that we must enter the kingdom by faith. That word faith is so important. So if you're in Matthew 13, let's begin by talking about a good find. Jesus talks about someone who found something good, and then we'll notice what he did in order to get it. In Matthew 13, we're going to look, first of all, in just verse 44. Jesus says this, tells the story. He says, the kingdom of heaven is like treasure hidden in a field, which a man found and then covered up. Then, in his joy, he goes and sells all that he has and buys the field. That's all Jesus tells us about this man. We can assume after he bought the field, he goes and digs up the treasure again. And so he's got himself this buried treasure. So we're going to begin by looking at what's known as the parable of the hidden treasure. This was a long time ago. They didn't have banks back then, no safety deposit boxes or safes or something that we might put our valuables in today. So if you had something valuable back then, what did you do with it? Well, you dug a hole. That's what you did with it. You buried it underground and you left it there for safekeeping. You might do it out in your field somewhere, maybe under a tree where you'll remember where it is. Maybe in your house, which had dirt floors, and you dig right there in your house and bury something. And so that might sound a little bit odd to us, but that was everyday life for people in this culture. They would be very used to the idea of someone burying treasure in their field or their house, underneath the floors of their house. Now, why would they do that? Well, for one thing, if thieves broke in, if a thief breaks into your house, they might go for your jewelry box. They might go for those top drawers where we keep our socks and maybe our cash, where our valuables might be. It's really not all that clever if you think about it. And so when thieves break in, that's one of the first places that they're going to go. If you break into someone's house back then and everything's hidden, you don't know where to look. You don't know where to start digging. So they would do that to keep them safe from thieves, but they would also do it because of invading armies. Now think back in the Old Testament. They had some problems with invading armies, didn't they? Here come the Assyrians. Here come the Babylonians. They invade. They round everybody up. They march them off to Babylon. And so they would bury their treasure and think, well, maybe I'm not going to get it, but I'm sure not going to let the Babylonians get their hands on my stuff either. And so they would bury it in hopes that one day I'll return, I'll dig it back up, and I'll be able to start a new life. And some of them did that. Some returned from Babylon and did just that. But you know what? When Assyria came in and attacked the north, those guys never came back. So throughout Israel, hundreds of years later, it was very common for someone to be digging around their land and find treasure buried there by people from all those years ago that hid it, and they hoped to come back and get it, they didn't. So when Jesus talks about someone finding treasure in a field, that might sound far-fetched to us, but that was happening in their culture, I imagine, all the time. When I was a kid, I loved a good treasure map, didn't you? X marks the spot. Wasn't that a lot of fun when maybe your parents would make you a map or something in the backyard, or maybe you did this with your friends? We had a birthday party one time where the kids' parents made us all a map, and then we had to follow around and we dug up, I don't even remember, candy or something. Pinatas are easier, just hit it with a stick. But the treasure map was fun as a kid because we were trying to find that buried treasure, and kids just love stuff like that. But this was real life stuff for them. So Jesus says in this parable, there's a guy, we don't know whose land it is, why he's there, how he stumbles on it, that doesn't matter, but he finds treasure. He finds it. He could stick it in his pocket or whatever it is, but he doesn't. He buries it back, and then he goes with joy, and he sells everything he owns. He has a yard sale. He brings out everything in his house. It's all up for sale. He sells the house. He sells the land. He sells his cattle. He sells his kidney. He sells anything he can get his hands on, and he says, I've got to make enough money to buy this field. And then Jesus goes and tells another parable just like it. We see the parable of the hidden treasure, but next he tells the parable of the pearl of great price. Look what he says in the next 2 verses. He says, again, the kingdom of heaven is like a merchant in search of fine pearls, who, on finding one pearl of great value, went and sold all that he had and bought it. So this is very similar to the story he just told. It was very common in those days for a teacher, as it is today for preachers even, to use 2 different stories to help illustrate the same truth. So these parables mean the same thing. It's just 2 ways of getting at the same issue. In one, there's a man who finds treasure and he goes out and buys the field. In this one, there's a merchant going to the marketplace. He's probably a wholesaler or someone who is a dealer or a supplier for other people, and he finds this one rare, valuable pearl. Now, it's expensive because he also has to go and sell everything that he has in order to acquire it. It's not like it's a flea market and they're selling it for a quarter. He still has to go liquidate everything in order to buy it. But evidently he knows, I can buy it and still sell it to make enough of a profit to pay myself back for everything I've lost in order to get this one precious pearl. I want you to think about this. Jesus says the kingdom of heaven is like this. The kingdom of heaven is like a man who finds that hidden treasure, And he goes and does everything he can, whatever it takes to get it. The kingdom of heaven is like a merchant who finds this one pearl, and he goes and does whatever it takes to get that one pearl. The kingdom of heaven is like that. For you today, whoever you are, wherever you sit, whatever your life is like, whatever your background, whatever you've done, it all comes down to this one thing. The kingdom of heaven is like this. You have stumbled upon something incredibly valuable. But then the question is, what are you going to do about it? What are you willing to do about it? What will you do to make that treasure your own? The kingdom of heaven is like a treasure hidden in a field. The kingdom of heaven is like a pearl for sale there in the marketplace. That's the kingdom of heaven. These guys had a choice to make. You know what they could have done? Man, it sure would be great to have that treasure. Man, it would be great if I could just buy that field. I know what I could do. I could probably sell my stuff, and maybe it'll still be for sale when I'm done selling everything, and maybe then I can go buy it, and yeah, it'd be good if I could just get around to doing that one day, and you kind of go on your day, and eventually you forget all about that treasure. There's people that certainly do that, aren't there? But not this guy. He runs, and with joy, he sells everything he has. I'm going to get rid of everything that's holding me back, and I'm going to make that treasure my own. I'm going to get my hands on that pearl, and it will be mine. I'm willing to get rid of everything that's holding me back so I can get this one precious treasure, this pearl of great price. And by the way, if you're wondering, pearls, they're not all that valuable. They sure were back then. We know today that diamonds are far more valuable than pearls. In fact, what is a girl's best friend? It's not pearls, is it? Diamonds. Diamonds are a girl's best friend. And by the way, can I just say, how fair is that? Diamonds are a girl's best friend. What's a man's best friend? A dog. Y'all get diamonds. We get dogs. I mean, whose idea was that? I'm just saying. I love my dog, but it just seems a little out of balance here is all I'm getting at. I'll move on. But we understand today how important, how valuable a diamond would be. In their culture, diamonds were virtually unheard of, but pearls were considered to be the rarest and most valuable thing a person can own. You know what most people did with their pearls? Well, they dug a hole in the ground and they buried them to keep them safe. And so these parables actually kind of run together in that regard. But we have to understand that a pearl was the most valuable thing that a person could get their hands on in that culture. So ask yourself this. If that were me, if I stumbled upon that treasure in the field, what would I do? If I came across that pearl in the marketplace, what would I do in order to make it mine? Well, I don't know if we're going to stumble upon any buried treasure, or if we're going to find that pearl in the marketplace. But every one of us today, if not before in your life, today, you're hearing the gospel message. You're hearing about heaven. You're hearing what you need to do to enter heaven. So the question then becomes, what am I willing to do about it? Am I willing to do what Jesus said? Deny myself. Take up my cross and follow after Jesus. Because if Jesus walked in here and he stood right here today and he said, who wants to go to heaven? Raise your hand. Every hand in the room would go up. Who wants to go to heaven? Well, let me tell you what to do. I've got this golden ticket. And if you want to go to heaven, all you've got to do is buy a ticket from me, and it's $1 million. What would you do? I imagine you would say, whatever it takes to get $1 million, to get my hands on that ticket, because I want to go to heaven when this life is over. Wouldn't you do that? Wouldn't you go and have a yard sale today? Wouldn't you put your house on the market today? Wouldn't you sell a kidney today? Wouldn't you do whatever you had to do to scrounge up that money until you could get your hands on the ticket? But you know what the good news is? Jesus is not asking us to buy our way into heaven. See, this whole idea of buying and selling in the parables, they are part of the parable. That's not real life. They are just as much a part of the analogy as the pearl and the treasure. We don't buy our way into heaven. But we do have to give up the same things that these people gave up. If we want to get our place in heaven, we've got to be willing to lay down some things. We've got to be willing to get rid of some things. If you said, I've got to get $1 million to buy my way into heaven, so I've got to get rid of stuff, even stuff I like. I may have to sell my laptop. I may have to sell my TV. I may have to get rid of these jewels that have been in the family for generations, but I need to earn this, to sell this, to get into heaven. Well, Jesus is not asking us to come up with a dollar amount. But you know what he says in the Bible? You've got to be willing to take up your cross and follow after me. And in the Bible, we see people that were not willing to do that. In the Gospels, people have already come to Jesus in this very book of Matthew. There was already a man that came to Jesus and he said, Lord, I'll follow you, but first, let me go take care of the family business. And Jesus says, you're not going to be worthy to follow me. There was a man that said, I want to follow you, Jesus, but my family inheritance is worth more to me than following you. There was a man that said, Jesus, I'll follow you. And he says, the birds have nests and the foxes have holes, but Jesus said, I don't even have a pillow. And this guy went away. He said, Jesus, I want to follow you, but the comforts of this life are more important to me than following you. There was a rich young ruler who went to Jesus and said, what thing do I have to do to earn eternal life? And that man went away sad because if he wanted to follow Jesus, he wanted his money more than he wanted Jesus. There are people today that do the same thing. They say, I want to follow after Jesus, but my beer and my drugs, my alcohol, that is worth more to me than following after Jesus. They say, oh, I want heaven when I die, but this relationship that I'm in is more important to me than following Jesus today. They say, oh, I want to go to heaven when I die, but the stuff that they do, they say, that means, what, you're telling me that I've got to quit committing adultery if I want to follow after Jesus? You're telling me that I've got to lose the bad attitude if I want to follow after Jesus? You're telling me that I need to forgive those people that have hurt me if I want to follow after Jesus? You mean to tell me that if I want to follow Jesus, I've got to clean up my language, I've got to work on my temper? If I want to follow after Jesus, I've got to quit filling my ears and my eyes with all this garbage out there in the world. If I want to follow Jesus, you're telling me I've got to do all that? Nah, I don't think so. Oh, I want heaven, sure, but I don't know if I can give up all that stuff. Imagine this person stumbles on the treasure and says, this will change my life if I can just sell off this stuff and then get my hands on this treasure. Following after Jesus is far greater than any treasure buried in any field. Following after Jesus is of far more value than any pearl or diamond you'll find in the marketplace today. It will change your life today. He'll change your life as long as there's breath in your lungs, and he will change your soul for all eternity. But he asks you to be willing to give up some stuff. The problem today is that people are not willing to do that. You'll find, though, that when you're willing to sell off your junk, then you'll be able to share Jesus. You'll be able to do something for him. You'll be able to have your life transformed. But most people say, I'm just not willing to do that. Oh man, it would be nice to go to heaven one day. It would be nice to live in a place where no one gets sick. No coronavirus, no flu, no diabetes, no cancer. Man, that would be nice, wouldn't it? It would be nice to live in a place where there's no crime. You don't have to worry about thieves breaking in and stealing. No violence. No one's sold into slavery. Wouldn't that be nice? It would be nice to live in a place where I'm never going to cry. Never going to have my heart broken. No one's ever going to stab me in the back, rip me off again. I've known that down here. It would be nice to live in a place where that doesn't happen, wouldn't it? Anybody with me? It would be nice to live in a place where I'll see mom and dad again. I'll see grandma and grandpa again. I'll see my old Sunday school teachers again. And I mean, it would be nice to be in a place where I'll see Jesus. Where I'll see the one who died on that old rugged cross for me. Wouldn't it be nice to be in a place like that? But what do I have to do to get there? You're telling me that I don't get to just come to Jesus like I am, get a little bit of heaven, and then leave like I am. Oh no, it doesn't work that way. The guy that finds his treasure in the field, he doesn't say, I just get to get this treasure on top of the way things already are in my life. No, business as usual was quickly interrupted when he was confronted with this treasure. The merchant didn't say, oh, that's a great price for that pearl. I'm just going to get that and add it to my life. No, he couldn't do that. He had to make some major changes in his own life before he could acquire that possession. Am I talking about earning your way to heaven? Absolutely not. You know me long enough to know that that is impossible, and I don't believe that anyone can be good enough to earn heaven or quit doing enough bad to make it to heaven. But what the Bible does teach is that if we want to follow after Jesus, we must be willing to surrender our lives. We must be willing to repent. We must be willing to turn our lives around for Jesus. Now look, we don't do that and then we get saved. But once we put our faith and our trust in Jesus, he gives us the ability to do that. He helps us turn it around. He helps us clean ourselves up. But we must be willing in order for that process to begin. We've got to bow our knee in humble submission before Jesus. We have to come to Jesus and say, it is now your life and not mine. You call the shots. You're my Lord. You're my boss. You command and I obey. You say jump, I say how high. You say go there, I say when do you want me? God, whatever you tell me to do, my life is yours. If you're telling me, God, that you want me to change this habit, it's done. God, if you're telling me you want me to get off those addictions, God, you and I together, we can break them. You're telling me, God, that you want me to stop going there, stop being with them, stop doing that, stop talking like that. God, I'm going to do it. And God, you want me to start trusting you with a tenth of my income? That's foreign to me, God, but if you want it, you got it, because my life is yours. God, you're telling me that you want me to go to church more? You want me to read this book more? You want me to get on my knees more? All right, God, you got it, because my life is yours. God, you want me to teach a class? You want me to take a class? God, you want me to work in the nursery or keep those children? Oh my goodness, God, I'm afraid of keeping those children. And he says, when you surrender to me, I will change your life. The things you thought you couldn't do, I'll show you that through Christ all things are possible. The things you said, oh, I'll never do that, I'll make you laugh at your old self as you begin to do those things for me. When we come to Christ, he radically changes all things. The old will pass away, and all things will become new. But we must be willing to sell off the stuff, to get rid of the junk that stands between us and God. The kingdom of heaven is like this. Now notice it's hidden in both places, isn't it? It's something that you have to find. Now that doesn't mean that I don't believe in any kind of eeny, meeny, miny, moe, God picks people to get saved. But what I do believe is that we each have to do a little bit of work in this process. We have to decide for ourselves if this is something we're going to do or not, to follow through or not, to make a commitment or not, to do the things that we know that we're supposed to do. You don't just wake up one day and accidentally got saved. God calls us through his Holy Spirit, but we must respond accordingly in obedience. We must count the cost and say, Lord, I've decided that following you is the best choice I can ever make. You know, this guy in the first parable sells everything. So for the time being, he's homeless, isn't he? For the time being, he has nowhere to go. I imagine he has very little to wear, probably nothing to eat. But you know what? In the end, it's all okay, isn't it? When he digs up that treasure and does whatever he does with it, he's not homeless anymore. I imagine his wardrobe is bursting with all kinds of robes and stuff. He probably look at that and say, which one of my robes do I want to wear today? Whereas we might look at the closet and say, I have nothing to wear. Man, this guy's got everything to wear. He's probably driving whatever would have been the equivalent of a Cadillac back then. I don't know, if a big horse, a nice donkey, whatever it is he wanted, he would have had it after he got his hands on this treasure. For a while there, he got rid of everything. But then he ended up with so much more. Same with the guy in the second parable. For a minute there, he gets rid of everything. He sells off his pearl inventory. He sells his house. He gets rid of it all. But then in the end, the things that he thought he lost, well, he ended up with so much more. You might be sitting here thinking, yeah, heaven's good. I want heaven. You got me on that. But all the stuff you're saying I got to give up, I just don't know. But you talk to any Christian who's had their life turned around by God, and they'll tell you, you know, I don't miss that old life. I don't miss the drugs. I don't miss the drinking. I don't miss waking up hungover. You know, I don't miss all the sneaking around. I don't miss all the cheating and the unfaithfulness. I don't miss being a liar. I don't miss being a gossip. I don't miss losing my temper. I don't miss that stuff anymore. Now, I never would have thought that I could give all that stuff up for Jesus, but I love the person he's turning me into. Does that mean that we become perfect and we never do that stuff again? We're still humans, we still have flesh, and we still make mistakes. But that old person dies with that old way of life. We make mistakes from time to time. But God transforms us in such a way that we can say, I used to be that person, but I've been washed by the blood, I've been sanctified, I've been justified, I've been set apart, I've been purified, I've been cleansed, and I'm a new person. I don't miss any of that stuff. Christians will tell you that. So if you're sitting there today thinking, I just don't know if I could really, oh, you can. And in the end, it'll be so worth it. You'll be so glad that you did. I'm not just talking about heaven and mansions and streets of gold. I'm talking about today. Let God change your life today, and you begin to live life to the fullest. Jesus talks about the good find in these first two parables, but then he shows what happens if you're the person that says, I just don't think I can do all that. In the next parable, he shows the repercussions of rejecting his gift of salvation. We've looked at the good find, but next he shows us some good fish. Look what he says beginning in the next verse, verse 47. He says, again, the kingdom of heaven is like a net that was thrown into the sea, and it gathered fish of every kind. When it was full, men drew it ashore, and they sat down and they sorted the good into containers, but they threw away the bad. So it will be at the end of the age. The angels will come out, and they will separate the evil from the righteous, and they will throw them into the fiery furnace. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Well, we can talk about heaven. We can talk about how everybody wants to go there. And man, if you choose it, that's great. But what happens if you reject it? Well, here he shows the flip side of that. Heaven is great. But what about those who walk away and say, the price is just too high? I just can't do all that. I just can't sell all that stuff. I just can't quit all that. So thanks, but no thanks. Jesus gives what's known here as the parable of the dragnet. He talks about how these people go out in their boats and they drag a net. Now, for fishermen in their culture, there were two different kinds of nets that were used. The drag net was huge. Some of them were almost half a square mile. And so people would get in two different boats. So in one boat, people would hold one end of the net, and way over there in the other boat, they'd hold the other end of the net. And as they would go out in their boats, they would kind of work a circle around each other, and those nets then would close in and grab everything that they could. Now, because the nets were so large, there would be all kinds of stuff in there. There'd be good fish, sure. They'd take the good fish, they'd put them in containers, they'd get them out in the market, they'd sell them, and that's why they were in business. But there was a lot of stuff in there that was not good fish. I haven't caught a whole lot of fish in my life. I've tried. I'm terrible at it. I have, however, caught a turtle, and I caught a boot. So it's currently mounted and stuffed, and it's above our mantle. So it's my biggest catch. But you can just imagine what kind of stuff that these nets would drag in. Yeah, there'll be good fish, but he says the bad. That word bad in Greek, it means putrid, and it's a word that's used to refer to dead things. So that there would probably be seaweed, there would probably be fish that were already dead that couldn't be sold, maybe fish that there was no market for, maybe turtles and boots, I don't know. Look, if that was around here, it would be cigarette butts and beer cans, but it would be stuff that would be brought in from the water that no one could do anything with it. And what do they do with this stuff? Well, they gather it up and they take it to the dump, the fiery furnace. They take it to a place where it's all going to be burned up, and there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. The angels are going to come and sort everything out. Well, we heard that before, didn't we? Just a few parables back. The parable of the wheat and the weeds. The wheat and the tares. You want us to go through and pick out all the weeds? No. We'll wait till the end, and then the reapers will come through. And Jesus said, my holy angels will come, and they will separate the weed from the wheat, the weed from the tares. Now here he says the angels are going to separate the fish from the junk. They're going to separate the good from the bad. They will separate the saved from the unsaved. They will separate those who said, yes, Lord, I will follow you, from those who said, I can never actually do that. They will separate the ones who said, I will go and sell all my possessions and buy that treasure, from the ones who said, it would be nice to have that treasure, but I just can't go and sell off my stuff. The angels will separate us all into two piles. Now, the fish are going to be gathered up and taken away, and that's the good thing. But all that junk is going to find its way to the fiery furnace, where there'll be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Does that describe you today? Have you responded to the invitation? You know what the kingdom of heaven is like. You know it's a treasure. You know what to do. You know exactly what God is asking of you. You know exactly what it will entail on your part if you want to follow after Jesus. Have you made that choice, or are you destined for the fire? Now look, you may have a lot of elbow room right now. You may be swimming along in there like a fish, feeling like you've got all this room and everything's okay. But what you don't realize is that net is slowly closing in around you, and it's being dragged to shore. And inside that net were all kinds of things that thought they were just fine until they reached the shore, and then here they come to separate the good from the bad. And now they're finding themselves headed for the fiery furnace. And they thought life was good. I'm just swimming around here in the water while that net was pulling them to shore. Today you might think, life's not bad. Man, everything's okay. God hasn't zapped me with lightning or anything. I must be doing just fine. And I've heard preachers preach about hell before, and I've heard you preach about judgment before, but hey, I'm okay over here. And you don't realize that net is closing in around you. I'm not saying you're going to die tomorrow, or next week, or next year. But what I am saying is, it is appointed unto man once to die, and after this is the judgment. And what the Bible also tells us that is in a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, when the last trumpet will sound and the dead in Christ will rise, and we who are alive and remain will be caught up together in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air. And yes, we will forever be with the Lord, but that leaves out a lot of people that are still down here. And that moment can happen at any second. So you're walking around life thinking life is good. I've got a lot of elbow room down here. Everything in life is good. And then in a second it's over. What's going to happen to you in that second? Oh, that could be 1,000 years from now. You may live another 50 years. But what if you don't? What if today's it? What if this is your last day here? Are you ready to stand before the Lord? Are you ready for the angels to come and separate into two groups? Are you going to be the good fish? Or are you going to be carried off to the fiery furnace? Jesus has shown that the kingdom of heaven is something that must be considered valuable to us. We must be willing to sell off everything to get there. That there are repercussions for those who reject. We must be like the good fish that make it. But we need to close by looking at what it takes for us to enter. And that is good faith. And we see that in the final few verses. In verse 51, Jesus asked the disciples, do you understand all this? They said, yes, Lord, we understand. So in verse 52, he says, good. He says, therefore, every scribe who has been trained for the kingdom of heaven is like a master of a house who brings out of his treasure what is new and what is old. Now look at what happens to Jesus next. And when Jesus had finished these parables, he went away from there, and coming into his hometown, he taught them in their synagogue, so that they were astonished and said, where did this man get his wisdom and these mighty works? Is this not the carpenter's son? Is not his mother called Mary? And are not his brothers James and Joseph and Simon and Judas? And are not all his sisters with us? Where then did this man get these things? And then they all converted and repented and believed. No, it's not what it says. They all took offense at him. But Jesus said to them, a prophet is not without honor, except in his hometown and in his own household. And he did not do many works there. Why? Because of their unbelief. He looks at the disciples and says, you guys understand what I'm saying? No further explanation needed? Yes, Lord, we got it. Good. Well, you're like a scribe. A scribe is like the master of the house that brings out the old and the new. In their culture, everybody had a storehouse where they would put stuff away for a rainy day. Maybe they were hand-me-down clothes the kids had outgrown. They had blankets, clothes, food. Some things were new, some things were old. And then their company would come. A lot of times uninvited guests would just show up. The master of the house would go out to the storehouse and bring it all out. Bring out the old, bring out the new, give everybody what they need. And Jesus says, you're like that now. You disciples, y'all are like that. You're like scribes who, you had the old information from the Old Testament, and now you're adding this new information about the kingdom of heaven. Now you know how to get there. And it's your job, disciples, to teach both the old and the new to everybody. And they would do just that. The day of Pentecost would go out, they'd turn the world upside down preaching the gospel. Christian, that's your job. Your job is to teach this truth to whoever you can, as often as you can, whenever you get the opportunity. You tell somebody about Jesus. You tell them about the kingdom of heaven. You tell them how it has changed your life. But then what happens? The disciples have faith, and they're good to go. But there's others that say, wait. This is the carpenter's son. His dad was Joseph. His mom was Mary. Like, he's not divine. He's not from heaven. His brothers are right here. Here's his sisters. We know this guy. He can't be the Messiah. And they were offended that he even claimed to be. And so Jesus refused to do any mighty works there. That's a shame, isn't it? The man who can heal the sick stops healing the sick. The one who can cast out demons stops casting out demons. The one that can raise the dead stops raising the dead because of their unbelief. Now, does this mean that as long as we have enough faith that anything's possible, and if it didn't happen to you, shame on you, you didn't have enough faith? That's not what it says. God can do whatever he wants whenever he wants to. He can heal you if he wants to. He can change your status if he wants to. He can change your surroundings if he wants to. With or without your faith, God can do whatever he wants as often as he wants. However, faith, 9 times out of 10, we see that faith is honored by God. And a lack of faith means that God will move on. Jesus says, yeah, I can stay here and do mighty works, but they've rejected me. So why don't I just go over here where they're receiving me and do my mighty works over there? And because of their unbelief, he chose to move on to people that were more receptive to what he had to say. There's a big difference between not believing in Jesus because you don't know about him and not believing in Jesus because you do know about him. These people knew about him. We know his mom, his dad, his brothers and sisters. We don't want anything to do with this guy. And so he says, okay, I'm going to go talk to the ones that just don't know about me yet. So maybe if you've rejected Jesus, it's not because you've never heard of Jesus. This is the buckle of the Bible belt. You're in church on a Sunday morning. You know about Jesus. You know who he is. If you haven't accepted Jesus today, it's not ignorance on your part. It's that you know a little too much about him. Yeah, I want him, I want heaven, I want all that stuff, but I don't want to repent. I don't want to surrender. I don't want to stop doing that stuff that, frankly, I just like doing. Now, so maybe one day when I'm old and I've lived my life and I've had my fun, maybe one day then I'll give him my life, but we're not guaranteed to make it to that point. If you haven't accepted Jesus today, it's not because you don't know who he is. It's because of your willful unbelief, your willful refusing to repent. It's because you've counted the cost and you thought, heaven, my sin. And you've weighed the cost and you've chosen a life of sin. But at the end of your life, that'll take you to the fiery furnace. It'll take you to the place where there's weeping and gnashing of teeth. If instead you would say, it's not just about heaven. Oh, heaven's going to be great. We've all agreed on that this morning. But it's not just heaven when I die. It's Jesus now. It's a relationship with God today. It's being able to pray today. It's being able to read his word today. It's being able to fellowship with like-minded believers today. It's being able to be part of this ministry and telling other people about Jesus today. I want him to be in my life, not just when I die, but before then. I want Jesus in my life each and every day as long as I live. And I want to live this life with Jesus, not apart from him. To me, there's not a sin in the world worth holding on to. There's not an activity or relationship. There's nothing to me worth trading my soul for. More than that, there's nothing down here worth trading life with Jesus today for. Amen. So what are you holding on to? What are you choosing over Jesus? The kingdom of heaven is like a pearl of great price. It's like a treasure hidden in a field. You've got the treasure map, the X's mark the spot, and you know exactly what you need to do to make it your own. But are you willing? If you've never done it, this is your chance. I'm going to ask you to please stand up this morning right where you are. If you know today you need to be saved, you know today you need to surrender, you need to repent, there's things you need to turn from, you know he's not the Lord and Savior of your life, you know you need to come forward, I'm asking you to come. Don't even wait for a piano to start playing. You come now, and we'll show you how to do this. If I had any doubt, if I didn't know that if I died, heaven would be my home, if I thought, if I died today, there's a chance I'd end up in hell, I wouldn't wait a second. I'd step out of that pew, I'd walk down the aisle, and I'd say, God, I need to be saved. If that's you today, you come. If you've got questions, maybe you're just not sure, maybe you think you're right, you're not sure you want to know 100%, you come. Maybe there's someone you want to pray for that you know is not saved, and you want to pray that they make that choice. You come. If there's anything in your heart, anything you need to do, the altar is open. This is your chance to respond. So, Lord, I pray now as this invitation is extended, God, I pray that we would do what we need to do to get our hands on that pearl of great price, to make that treasure our own. God, I'm thankful that you offer it freely. All we've got to do is give up the junk that ruins our lives anyway. The only thing you ask us to give up is the stuff that poisons our body, the stuff that poisons our minds, the stuff that ruins relationships, the stuff that makes us worse people. You say, if you just give up that, I'll make your life better and save your soul. Lord, I pray that someone will come accept that free gift today if they've never done it. So, Lord, these next few minutes, we lift this time up to you. We dedicate it to you, God. I pray your Holy Spirit will work. And I ask this prayer in Jesus' name. Amen. As the music's playing, this is your chance. Don't let the song end if you don't know that you're right with God.